After 60, intimacy leaves a different kind of trace. It doesn't always show up as excitement, constant reassurance, or dramatic emotion. More often it reveals itself in calm shifts, quieter presence, slower pace, gentle attentiveness, steady openness, and a willingness to stay connected without pressure. The issue when intimacy truly matters to a man later in life, it doesn't unsettle him, it centers him. His body settles, his behavior softens, his connection becomes more intentional, not more intense. And when you understand these signs, you stop misreading calm as distance. The issue, it's about recognizing how a man integrates closeness when it feels meaningful and safe. When intimacy lands well, it doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up quietly, consistently, and with respect. Understanding these subtle signs allows you to meet him where he truly is, not where movies or expectations say he should be. And from that understanding, connection becomes less confusing and far more honest, grounded, and real. If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to like this video. It truly helps the channel grow and reach others who may be trying to understand love and intimacy later in life. Share it with a friend, a partner, or someone you care about who might benefit from these insights. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss our future videos. I'm Vernon. Thank you for watching my video till now, and see you next time. Baghdad lives in memory as a soft illumination rather than a place, a city remembered through light, sound, and long echoes of importance. It once mattered in ways few cities ever do. Scholars arrived here carrying questions that refused simple answers. Physicians argued over bodies, balances, and causes late into the night. Merchants moved quietly, counting profit while knowledge circulated freely. Ideas traveled faster than armies ever could. You can feel it even now. Ink drying slowly on parchment beneath warm lamps. Water moving patiently through canals built for permanence. Coins touching one another with reassuring weight. The treasury remained vast, sealed, and deeply respected. Religious authority felt unquestioned, almost automatic in its presence. The past repeated itself often enough to feel like proof, and repetition is very calming. You walk through palace corridors. A mind, your footsteps remain soft, absorbed by polished stone floors. Gold rests quietly where it has rested for generations. Nothing here suggests urgency. The city's strength has shifted from practical to ceremonial. Armies exist mostly as records rather than formations. Defensive walls are admired more for symbolism than maintenance. Appointments favor lineage, loyalty, and tradition. You notice the delay before anyone else does? Not panic, not fear, just hesitation disguised as dignity. Baghdad trusts what it has already survived. It trusts walls that once held firm. It trusts allies who once answered calls for aid. Inherited confidence fills rooms quietly. At night, the city breathes evenly without interruption. Oil lamps flicker in familiar patterns along streets. Guards stand where guards have always stood before. No one wishes to disturb balance by suggesting preparation. Preparation would imply doubt, and doubt feels unnecessary here. The gold remains untouched, impressive, and entirely theoretical. The army remains visible mostly during ceremonies and discussions. Everything looks secure when viewed from inside the walls. From outside, the stillness reads differently. You might even admire the restraint. The issue: why rush when history appears to favor you? Why spend resources when prestige feels self-sustaining? Why change when continuity has always felt like protection? These questions sound reasonable when spoken softly. They hum over life just before. Civilizations often mistake comfort for stability. History rarely corrects that assumption gently. Beyond the walls, the air feels sharper and more deliberate. Horses stand quietly, conserving energy without restlessness. Orders are spoken once, then remembered precisely. Someone somewhere has already finished waiting. The Mongols enter the story without noise. They do not rush forward to prove bravery. They arrive quietly, already finished with emotion. You may expect chaos when you think of them. You may imagine disorder, cruelty, and uncontrolled violence. That expectation belongs to people who never watched closely. What the Mongols bring instead: feety walls. The ground feels firm, pressed flat by many hooves. Horses remain still, breathing evenly in the cold air. No one wastes energy pacing or boasting. Everything waits because waiting is part of the plan. The first message always a riders who know the route: submit, and the city continues to exist tomorrow. Refuse, and the city becomes an example. Nothing here is vague or emotional. You notice how much time they allow. Days pass without pressure or movement. The silence feels intentional rather than uncertain. The Mongols trust patience more than momentum. This is not mercy. This is efficiency, wearing a calm expression. Territory matters less than obedience and memory. Cities are not prizes to be occupied. They are signals sent outward to others. Each siege teaches nearby rulers how decisions end. You watch the camps from a distance. Tents align with careful spacing and repetition. Orders travel once and never need repeating. Everyone knows the sequence well enough to sleep. The Mongols do not debate strategy loudly. They already tested it somewhere else. They do not improvise unless necessary. Improvisation introduces risk. And risk wastes time. You begin to understand something uncomfortable. It requires agreement, discipline, and follow through. The issue when refusal arrives from behind city walls: nothing changes. No outrage spreads through the camp. No speeches are given to motivate anyone. The process simply advances to the next step. Encirclement begins without announcement. Supplies stop moving inward without confrontation. The air tightens, even without visible violence. The city senses pressure before it sees damage. This is where misunderstandings become fatal. Some rulers expect anger to burn out quickly. Others assume negotiations will restart out of haps. Once the process moves forward, it stays forward. There is no villain monologue to react against. There is no emotional opening to exploit. Only structure continuing exactly as designed. The Mongols do not enjoy destruction. They simply complete tasks assigned by refusal. Cities that understand this early often survive. This system spreads faster than armies ever could. Stories travel ahead of the horses. Fear does the recruiting long before arrival. In many cases, the walls open themselves. The Mongols consider that a successful outcome. The night grows quieter near the palace in caution. The ultimatum reaches Baghdad without drama or decoration. A sealed message, clear words, and generous time attached. Nothing about it sounds emotional or rushed. Inside the palace, discussion begins the usual way: slow voices, careful pauses, and practiced disagreement. Cities can exist under new rules, they remind everyone. Pride, after all, does not feed populations. Another group trusts stone and geometry. They point to walls that have stood for generations. They describe fortifications like loyal old friends. They speak of protection that cannot be measured. A holy city, they insist, does not fall easily. Divine favor feels more reliable than logistics. The room fills with certainty of different kinds. Each certainty cancels out the others politely. At the center sits the caliph, listening patiently. He nods at wisdom, faith, and tradition. Equally, delay begins to feel like balance. You notice how delay gains respect here. No defenses are reinforced during these discussions. No treasury doors open for urgent preparation. Gold remains mostly where it already stands. Eventually, pride settles into the final decision. The ultimatum is not accepted or rejected clearly. Time continues to pass without adjustment. Then something unexpected feels necessary. A demonstration of strength, perhaps a show of resolve beyond the walls. You watch troops assemble with uneven energy. Armor fits poorly on soldiers untested by urgency. The issue confidence fills the gaps where coordination should be. The army moves outward rather than inward. It meets a force already arranged for this choice. The Mongols do not react with surprise. They prepare for refusal as thoroughly as submission. Stream becomes redirected, then surrounded. You sense the moment before collapse. Horses turn where they should advance. Signals fail to reach their destinations. Retreat arrives too late to remain orderly. The engagement ends without ceremony. The main force disappears from the equation. Baghdad loses its shield apens. Confidence has fewer places to stand now. The treasury remains closed despite everything. Gold continues to symbolize power it never used. Walls suddenly feel larger than the army behind them. You might notice the irony forming slowly. The choice meant to preserve authority removes it instead. The delay intended to maintain dignity accelerates loss. Pride often believes time is negotiable. The city feels disagrees without discussion. Inside the palace, footsteps sound unusually loud. The city finally opens itself without ceremony or relief. The gates move slowly, heavy with weeks of hesitation. Surrender arrives late, carrying no leverage with it. You stand close enough to feel the stillness change. Not chaos, not triumph. This moment feels less like defeat and more like paperwork. The caliph steps forward without resistance or illusion. Authority remains in posture but not in outcome. His submission holds symbolic weight only. The decisions the quiet calculation around him. No celebration rises from the Mongol ranks. They did not come for gestures. They came for conclusion, delivered with precision. The execution is arranged with careful restraint. No blade is drawn in haste or anger. No blood is permitted to touch the ground. The method respects religious boundaries, without respecting power. This is not punishment fueled by emotion. It is communication structured for memory. The caliph's death becomes a sentence spoken clearly, not to Baghdad but to every distant capital. Listening power ends here and it ends cleanly. You might expect shouting or final pleas. Instead, there is quiet compliance for emphasis. The royal family does not linger in footnotes. Their removal is thorough and unceremonious. Lineage dissolves without inheritance or continuation. 5 centuries of authority end without argument. You feel the adders lose their sense of direction. Rooms designed for command feel undecided now. The heir no longer recognizes filial and despot. The Abbasid Caliphate does not fade slowly. It stops not with collapse but with punctuation. You might find the restraint unsettling. There is no excess, no indulgence in cruelty. Only a lesson delivered once, carefully, and remembered widely. Empires rarely fall because of chaos alone. The Mongols leave witnesses intentionally alive. Stories travel faster than armies ever could. Cities learn the meaning without seeing the method. Walls open earlier after this. Fear, when designed properly, saves effort. You stand there long enough to understand. This was about setting a standard others would recognize. The message does not need repeating. History prefers efficiency over drama. Ash settles slowly over broken stone tonight. Some lessons linger longer than ruins. Baghdad does not disappear all at once after the conquest. It remains standing long enough to be understood properly. This is not destruction driven by impatience or rage. You walk through streets that still recognize their own names. Walls stand where walls have always stood before. The city breathes, but the rhythm feels altered. What falls is chosen carefully. Libraries burn first, not by accident or confusion. Shelves collapse under deliberate fire, and steady handshake turns to smoke that smells faintly bitter. Pages lift briefly, then surrender to heat. You notice how quiet the burning feels. The House of Wisdom does not scream or resist. It simply stops contributing to the future. Centuries of accumulation vanish within hours. Not everything valuable needs to be stolen. Some things only need to be removed. Water systems follow next with similar precision. Wheels stop turning without ceremony or explanation. The city begins to thirst before it understands hunger. You feel dryness arrive slowly in your mouth. People move next, and they move unevenly. Some are killed where they stand. Others are taken far enough to never return easily. Absence spreads faster than grief ever could. This is not chaos pretending to be strategy. This is strategy wearing a quiet expression. You notice something else if you stay attentive. Not everyone disappears. Some are left intentionally alive. They remain to remember details accurately. Memory becomes a surviving function. News travels ahead of the Mongol horses. Stories move along trade routes without exaggeration. Cities hear what happened without needing confirmation. Walls begin opening before armies appear on horizons. You feel fear reorganize decision-making elsewhere. Cabals choose submission without negotiation. Treasuries already done the demonstration. This is the efficiency the Mongols prefer. You might expect the city to vanish completely. Instead, it remains as a reference point, a place others mention quietly during councils. A name that shortens debates immediately. Baghdad becomes instructional repetition. It only requires consistency and witnesses. The Mongols understand that fear works best when shared. You stand long enough to notice the intention. Nothing here is excessive or unfinished. The destruction stops exactly where the message ends. That restraint is the final destruction equals anger. Sometimes destruction equals communication. The wind carries ash beyond the city tonight. Other cities feel it before dawn arrives. Issue. The journey begins to slow now. The weight of the story gently lifts away. Nothing more is being carried forward tonight. Somewhere far behind us, a city rests in silence. Stone walls cool under a sky without urgency. Ash has long settled into the soil. The echoes of fire no longer ask for attention. You can almost sense it fading. The soft sound of a book closing slowly, the careful motion of a door returning to place. Time releases what it borrowed from you. It does so without explanation or ceremony. The room around you feels familiar again. The air is steady and unremarkable. Breathing becomes even, then unimportant. History stays where it belongs tonight, not erased, not repeated, simply allowed to remain in the past. If this story stayed with you in any quiet way, you are welcome to leave a small trace behind, only if it feels natural in this moment. These small gestures help stories travel softly. They find others who listen when nights are long. There is no urgency attached to them, only an open invitation waiting patiently. For now, let the echoes finish, dissolving. Let the last images lose their sharpness. Allow sleep to arrive from you. Thank you for walking through time with me. Goodbye, and we will meet again.